A legal mind, a champion of causes, a digital influencer, a statesman, a chronicler of truth. He wore many hats, but above all, he was the embodiment of the people's voice. Vladimir Putin, despite his formidable power and influence, had a singular figure who struck fear into his very heart. This Russian's mission was clear and unwavering: to unveil the truth behind the facade, revealing the inner workings of Russia's intricate web of corruption and deceit. His determination to dismantle this web of influence struck a chord not only with the Russian people but also with observers worldwide, offering a glimpse behind the curtain of modern Russia. Who is he, and what is his story? Today we explore the life of Alexei Navalny. Alexei Navalny was born on June 4, 1976, in Putin, Russia, not far from Moscow. His father served in the Soviet army and his mother worked as an economist. Growing up, Navalny lived in various towns near Moscow due to his father's military postings. During summers, he stayed with his grandmother near Chernobyl, Ukraine. Following the nuclear plant explosion in April 1986, Navalny's family witnessed the government's attempt to conceal the disaster. They were evacuated from the area after observing the authorities' efforts to downplay the radiation risks, including forcing locals to plant crops in contaminated soil. After graduating with a law degree from the People's Friendship University of Russia in Moscow in 1998, Alexei Navalny decided to remain in the city to further his career and academic pursuits. His dedication to education led him to obtain an additional degree in economics from the Financial University under the government of the Russian Federation in 2001. During his student years, Navalny became increasingly involved with Yabloko, a prominent political party in Russia advocating for liberal democracy and a market economy. At that time, opposition groups such as Yabloko held a significant sway in Russia's political landscape. Navalny's active participation within Yabloko showcased his commitment to political engagement and reform. However, the political climate in Russia underwent a transformation with the consolidation of pro-Putin parties into United Russia in 2001. This consolidation significantly marginalized dissenting voices and posed challenges for opposition movements like Yabloko. Despite this shift, Navalny continued to climb the ranks within Yabloko, demonstrating his resilience and determination to effect change. Navalny's journey within Yabloko faced a pivotal moment in 2007 when he was unexpectedly expelled from the party. Yabloko representatives accused him of involvement in nationalistic activities, including his attendance at a far-right march. Navalny, however, maintained that his expulsion was primarily a result of clashes with party leader Grigory Yavlinsky rather than a reflection of his ideological stance. This expulsion marked a turning point in Navalny's political trajectory, prompting him to reassess his strategies and allegiances. Despite the setback, Navalny's commitment to challenging the status quo and advocating for democratic principles remained undeterred, setting the stage for his subsequent emergence as a prominent opposition figure in Russia. What led to Navalny becoming a significant figure and posing a threat to Putin's regime? In 2006, Navalny began a blog focusing on corruption, which became significant in understanding his rise. To grasp the context, we look back to December 31, 1999, when Putin assumed the presidency of Russia. Coming from a background as a spy in the Soviet KGB and heading the Russian security service, Putin aimed to govern in a manner shaped by these roles. He sought to reshape Russia akin to the KGB's centralized, secretive structure, believing it would ensure control. Thus, he surrounded himself with influential figures to consolidate power. Putin's control over media started with independent outlets, where police targeted owners and brought newsrooms under state influence. This control extended from federal television to regional TV and print newspapers, effectively silencing dissenting voices. With public attention diverted, Putin turned his focus to Russia's elections, manipulating candidacy rules to favor his party and regime-sanctioned candidates. This tactic aimed to fragment the opposition vote, consolidating power in Putin's hands. Putin ensured his grip on power through rigged vote counting, making it extremely challenging for anyone to challenge him or his party. United Russia dominated both central and local governments nationwide, consolidating control. However, politicians weren't the only targets. Putin also pursued Russia's oligarchs and their influential associates, aiming to silence dissent. In the early 2000s, Russia's wealth was concentrated among a select few, whom Putin protected as long as they pledged loyalty. Those who opposed him faced arrest on fabricated charges or even mysterious deaths. Embezzlement charges were a common tactic used to eliminate critics. Former Russian tycoons like Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Boris Berezovsky were convicted of embezzlement, while others faced accusations or mysterious deaths, illustrating how the judiciary became a tool of the state. With legal authority, Putin fortified his position by aligning with powerful figures and using corruption as a glue to hold it all together. Reports suggested that over $400 billion was lost to corruption in Russia between 2000 and 2008, but much of it remained hidden due to Putin's control of the media. However, Alexei Navalny emerged as a disruptor, challenging this status quo. In 2008, Navalny launched a campaign aimed at publicly traded state-owned companies through stakeholder activism. By purchasing small amounts of stock in these entities, he gained access to shareholder meetings. There, he questioned corporate leaders about financial inconsistencies and a lack of transparency in management. Many of these executives were close allies of Putin, making these encounters a rare outlet for dissent in a society where political dialogue was increasingly restricted. Navalny chronicled his efforts in a widely read blog, prompting Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who shared power with Putin from 2008 to 2012, to acknowledge the rampant corruption. According to Medvedev, around 1 trillion rubles, approximately $31 billion, were being siphoned off annually from the state procurement system. Navalny's direct posting to his blog bypassed state media, allowing him to expose corruption and critique Putin's regime in unprecedented ways for Russians. Through this approach, he was able to build a reputation for himself while challenging the government's narrative. In December 2010, Alexei Navalny embarked on a transformative endeavor by launching Was, a groundbreaking website dedicated to unearthing and exposing corrupt practices entrenched within government contracts. The platform's name, a clever play on words meaning Russian saw, symbolized its mission to cut through the layers of corruption, with saw serving as a colloquial term for embezzlement in Russian. Rospil swiftly gained traction, attracting widespread attention by shedding light on instances where state contracts appeared to have been awarded through dubious and unfair means. Navalny's initiative encouraged visitors to contribute anonymously, sharing details of suspicious dealings and engaging in discussions about corruption online. Within a remarkably short span of just 6 months, Rospil began drawing an astonishing 1 million visits per month, indicative of its resonance among the Russian populace and the growing demand for transparency and accountability in governance. Moreover, Navalny's influence extended beyond Rospil as he coined the resonant phrase "party of crooks and thieves" to aptly characterize Putin's United Russia Party, encapsulating the sentiments of many disillusioned citizens and serving as a rallying cry for burgeoning protests against systemic corruption. The pivotal moment arrived in December 2011, when widespread irregularities marred Russian parliamentary elections, igniting widespread outrage and catalyzing the largest wave of protests witnessed since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Navalny emerged as a prominent figurehead within this burgeoning movement, leveraging his investigative prowess to publicly condemn and expose corruption at the highest levels of power. Despite facing relentless suppression efforts, including state-controlled media blackout, mass arrests exceeding 1,000 individuals, and targeted persecution of organizers, Navalny remained steadfast in his commitment to championing democratic principles and combating corruption. Tragically, the movement suffered a profound loss with the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, a fellow activist and ally of Navalny, further underscoring the perilous environment in which they operated. Undeterred by the adversities and dangers inherent in his activism, Navalny continued to refine his organizational skills and cultivate a dedicated following, laying the groundwork for future mobilizations and asserting himself as a formidable force against entrenched corruption and authoritarianism in Russia. Despite evidence of vote tampering, Putin's party received less than half of the vote. Navalny himself was jailed for 15 days for joining an unsanctioned protest, marking the beginning of his clashes with the Russian prison system. As Navalny's influence grew, the Kremlin took notice. When Putin returned to the presidency in 2012, he swiftly cracked down on dissent. Within a month of Medvedev's term ending, Navalny's home was raided by law enforcement, and he became the subject of a corruption investigation. Putin also imposed harsh penalties for those involved in unauthorized protests. On July 17, 2013, Alexei Navalny made a bold declaration that reverberated throughout Moscow's political landscape. He announced his candidacy for the city's mayoral race. Despite facing a glaring absence of airtime from state-controlled television channels, Navalny's campaign garnered significant traction and support, fueled by its resonant core message of accountability and transparency in governance. Drawing on the enthusiasm of his supporters, Navalny orchestrated a multifaceted campaign strategy, leveraging rallies, online crowdfunding initiatives, and the unwavering dedication of a formidable team of volunteers to disseminate his message far and wide. However, as Navalny's momentum surged, he encountered a formidable obstacle. On seemingly fabricated charges of embezzlement, he was abruptly detained by law enforcement authorities and subsequently handed down a harsh 5-year prison sentence. This heavy-handed action by the authorities served as a catalyst for widespread public outrage, sparking massive protests across the streets of Moscow in a resounding display of solidarity and defiance against perceived injustice. In a surprising turn of events, Navalny's incarceration proved to be short-lived. Swiftly released from detention pending his appeal, he defiantly resumed his mayoral campaign, undeterred by the specter of state repression. Employing a blend of Western-style campaign tactics such as street meetings, online promotion, and the dissemination of glossy posters featuring his family, Navalny endeavored to bridge the gap created by his exclusion from mainstream media platforms. Denied access to the influential reach of major television channels, Navalny pivoted towards grassroots mobilization efforts, harnessing the power of grassroots activism and digital advocacy to amplify his message. Ultimately, the electoral outcome saw incumbent Mayor Sergei Sobyanin, a close ally of Vladimir Putin, secure re-election with just over 51.3% of the votes, while Navalny achieved a surprisingly robust second-place finish, capturing approximately 27.2% of the vote share. In the wake of the mayoral election, Navalny's legal woes persisted. In October of the same year, an appeals court upheld his embezzlement conviction, casting a shadow of uncertainty over his political future. However, in a surprising twist, the court opted to suspend his prison sentence, granting Navalny a reprieve from immediate incarceration and allowing him to remain free. Though the conviction rendered him ineligible to stand for elected office in the immediate term, Navalny retained the ability to engage in various other forms of political activism and advocacy. This turn of events coincided with a subtle shift in the political landscape, epitomized by a novel policy directive spearheaded by Putin's close aide, Vyacheslav Volodin. Termed competition without change, this policy ostensibly signaled a cautious willingness to accommodate elements of the liberal opposition within the existing political framework, provided they adhered to the established rules of engagement. Navalny's continued presence on the political stage exemplified the delicate balance between repression and accommodation characterizing Russia's evolving political dynamics. Navalny persisted in exposing corruption through YouTube videos. In a 2017 video revealing the extreme wealth of Putin's ally, Dmitry Medvedev, Navalny reached millions of viewers and ignited another wave of protests. Navalny's activism persisted, leading to repeated incarcerations by the Putin administration. In December 2014, he received a 3.5-year suspended sentence for fraud charges, while his brother Oleg was imprisoned for the same offense. Navalny's strong showing in the 2013 Moscow mayoral election prompted Putin to implement managed democracy, maintaining the democratic facade while controlling election outcomes. In the November 2016 legislative election, United Russia claimed victory, but observers noted numerous irregularities like ballot stuffing and repeat voting. Navalny's Progress Party was banned from participating after the Russian Justice Ministry canceled its registration. In a bid to boost his domestic support, Putin set the 2018 presidential election on the 4th anniversary of Russia's annexation of Crimea. Navalny was barred from challenging Putin due to his suspended prison sentence, prompting him to call for an election boycott. Predictably, Putin won by a landslide in an election marked by widespread irregularities. On August 19, 2020, Russian politician Alexei Navalny was filming a campaign video in Siberia, ahead of local and regional elections in about 3 weeks. He wasn't running for office. He urged people to vote out the ruling party, United Russia, led by President Vladimir Putin. Navalny's videos typically garnered millions of views, showcasing his ability to connect with people online and making him a prominent figure in Russia's opposition movement. However, while en route to Moscow, his plane was diverted to Omsk. Navalny had been poisoned with Novichok, a deadly nerve agent developed by the Soviet Union in the 1970s. This incident, reminiscent of the 2018 attack on former spy Sergei Skripal, sparked widespread outrage and fueled a movement unlike any seen in recent history. Despite the assassination attempt, Navalny survived and continued to be a vocal critic of the Russian government. Due to safety concerns in a Russian hospital, Navalny's family arranged for him to be flown to Berlin, where he remained in a medically induced coma for recovery. The next month, opposition candidates achieved unexpected success in local elections held in the region where Navalny had been campaigning. Despite Kremlin denials of involvement in the poisoning, such claims became less believable given the numerous attacks on Putin's critics. Notably, Putin avoided mentioning Navalny's name in public. While recovering in a German clinic, Navalny collaborated with Christo Grozev from the investigative group Bellingcat to uncover details of the Novichok attack. Grozev's team exposed several FSB agents involved in the poisoning. Navalny even spoke with one of the identified agents, pretending to be a senior Russian security official's aide. During their conversation, the agent admitted that the outcome would have been different if not for the plane's emergency landing and swift medical intervention in Omsk. The publication of this call embarrassed Putin, prompting the FSB to dismiss it as fake. On January 17, 2021, Navalny returned to Russia and was promptly arrested by security services. He was sentenced to 3.5 years in a penal colony within weeks. Russian prison officials claimed Navalny violated the terms of his 2014 suspended sentence by not reporting to them during his hospitalization in Germany. While in prison on March 31st, Navalny began a hunger strike that lasted 3 weeks. His supporters protested in the streets, and Navalny continued his active social media presence from behind bars. As legislative elections approached in the fall, Russian authorities took further measures to limit Navalny's political influence. In June 2021, a Moscow court designated any group associated with Navalny as an extremist organization, prohibiting its members from running for office. Just days before the September election, the Russian government compelled Apple and Google to remove a smart voting app developed by Navalny's allies from their online stores. Russian officials had threatened to imprison specific local employees of the two companies, prompting a Navalny aide to denounce the decision as a shameful act of political censorship. In March 2022, amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Navalny faced new charges of fraud and contempt of court. He received a 9-year sentence in a strict regime penal colony. Despite being unable to speak in court, he used Twitter to reaffirm his commitment to exposing the truth to the Russian people. Navalny was transferred to the notorious IK6 maximum security prison in Melikovo, where he spent much time in solitary confinement. He urged his followers to protest against Putin's actions in Ukraine, but the government's response to protests became increasingly harsh as the war continued. Criticism of Russia's performance in the war was criminalized, and some protesters were even served with draft papers while in police custody. In December 2023, Navalny's lawyers lost contact with him for nearly 3 weeks before discovering he had been moved to a penal colony in the Arctic Circle. On February 16, 2024, the Federal Penitentiary Service Department for the Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous Okrug stated that Navalny lost consciousness after going for a walk. Medical workers from the penal colony attended to him, and an ambulance arrived shortly after. Despite efforts to revive him, Navalny did not recover. His death was officially reported at 14:17 Yekaterinburg time, with news of it spreading in the media a few hours later. The following day, Navalny's spokeswoman, Kira Yarmish, confirmed his death and called for his remains to be returned to his family. The exact cause of Navalny's death has not been officially disclosed. He passed away at the age of 47. His death sparked protests and gatherings in various countries, including Russia, where many mourners were detained. Western officials and Russian opposition activists blamed Russian authorities, including President Vladimir Putin, for Navalny's death, although no evidence was cited. Yulia Navalnaya, Alexei Navalny's wife, declared that those responsible for her husband's death will face consequences. In a video recorded on February 19, 2024, she vowed to continue Alexei's work, stating that Putin's actions took away a part of her, but she remains determined. She urged others not to give up the fight. Navalnaya also called for the EU to reject the legitimacy of the 2024 Russian presidential election due to the assassination of her husband. Navalny's mother, Lyudmila, expressed disbelief at his death, emphasizing that he was lively and well just days prior. Navalny's farewell ceremony took place in Moscow on March 1, 2024, at the Mother of God, Soothe My Sorrows Church in the Mariino district. He was laid to rest in the Borisovskoye Cemetery in the Bratayevo district. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more updates on future releases. If you found this video insightful, you'll definitely enjoy the one currently playing on your screen. Just click, and I'll catch you in the next one.